Well, here we are. It's Thursday, July 30th, and current situation is a mess. Yeah. So I spoke too soon about Lindsey Graham's funeral. I finally saw some of the video from it and actually was able to go out and see what the let's just say what the event looked like, and didn't disappoint. So really interesting deal. You can see the tension there. So there's a clip floating around social media where it looks like Netanyahu is he's given direction to Marco Rubio and to Pete Hegseth. And my guess is he talked about the international criminal courts earlier this week. So I think it was part of that. I think it had to do with Iran, but who knows, right? I went back to so my apologies yesterday if I was a little amped up when I got on the show. I just had a call before the show and was told that not only was Fauci's pardon not going to be challenged, but they weren't going to prosecute him or Deborah Birx or Robert Redfield. And I was told it came right from Susie Wiles's desk, which unbelievable. So I was a little angry about that, but it doesn't surprise me because then Trump came out this morning and said that, yeah, I'm gonna honor the auto pen pardon, and I'm not going to question it. But let's put that in perspective, because you can't preemptively pardon somebody. I mean, that's not a thing. Like, I pardon you for all the evil and criminal stuff you're going to do for the rest of your life. That's not real. That in the premise in and of itself is not only not legal, but it's not even constitutional. And the speculation is that Trump is going to pardon his family and pardon his friends, and yeah, it's just. I'm just gonna say this: Trump is compromised like the rest of them, and it's clear that he's not running the show. He's a non-player character. That's how I see it. And this Iran war tells me everything I need to know. Because the other thing that Alex Jones came out with yesterday is that Trump he's literally considering the draft. So if let's just say, for devil's advocate's sake, that comes to pass, and they do implement a draft. As far as I'm concerned, the moment they do that, revolution. Because it clearly shows that not only are they not in charge, but they've already handed off sovereignty. They don't need the NDAA. If everything I saw First of all, you could see the tension in the room. You could see the visceral hatred between people. And when it gets that bad, that we are right on the cusp of revolution. I mean, this is a good example of how pretentious and contentious it was just before the Civil War, the outbreak of the Civil War. And we're there. We are right there. I think what happened in Israel today is a bellwether of that. I mean, even the Jewish people are getting sick of Netanyahu, and they're getting sick of the satanic overlords. I mean, 100, looks like 100 and 110 soldiers walked off base today because they said their commanders were practicing satanic rituals. I mean, that's a loud statement. But, 100 soldiers does not make a revolution. But if that's indicative of the rest of the way the rest of the country feels, just a matter of time before they implode. And once they implode, we'll implode. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but all this woke ideology, all of the communist influence into this country, I'm sick of it. I'm more than sick of it. I'm ready to take this country full stop, because clearly the message isn't resonating with the elite. And, I wish I knew who all of them were, especially the names that we don't know, because then this problem would be very easy to solve. And it wouldn't take a lot of people to do it. But here we are on the cusp of yet another revolution, which has been architected, by the way, and it's a part of the whole depopulation scheme. If they couldn't get us with a famine, if they couldn't get us with a pandemic, they couldn't get us with nuclear war, they couldn't get us with a world war, then they'll get us with a revolution. They always, the thing is, they always bet on both ponies. And no matter which way you play it, there's always somebody in the background that's pulling the strings and manipulating. So I don't have any illusions about what's ahead of us. I see what Michael Yon sees. He sees the architecture for a famine and shortages. I see that too. I was told the other day that I guess Trump went into one of his staff meetings and was yelling at people and screaming at the general officers because they didn't have a solution for Iran. And I guess General Kane said to him very politely, "We told you not to do this. We told you there was no exit once we did this. And you didn't listen. So you're yelling at us to come up with a solution for something that we shouldn't have done in the first place." Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, it means that the general officers are getting fed up too. And I would hope so, because, I've heard the argument, you don't want to fall on your sword, and nobody's going to fall on their sword because it wouldn't do anything. All it's going to take, courage is contagious. All it's going to take is one general officer to stand up at the Pentagon and say, "I've had enough. We're not doing this anymore on behalf of Israel. We're not doing a draft. We're not going to deploy to the streets. We're not going to draft non-American citizens. We're done. We're going to deploy our soldiers to DC, and we're going to start arresting people because it's time to start cleaning this up." It's only going to take one, and then this problem will metastasize into a revolution, and they'll be surprised. I think those general officers would be amazed at how much support they would get from the general public and a lot of former military, former and retired, because the population is sick of it, right? I can't go to movies anymore. I mean, I haven't done it in 12 years anyway, because I got sick of movies way back in, after the first Marvel Avengers, and I watch them every so often just to see all the themes and messages in them. When you watch Endgame, you see Tony Stark come back from space, and he's talking about, remember, we were the Prevengers, we're the Avengers, and you're all worried about your precious freedoms. All those messages are laced throughout all those movies, and now it's just every liberal trope, every pun done to the extreme, to the point where it's just completely non-watchable. And yeah. And by the way, I had a shill in the comments section in YouTube. It's amazing to me how they have to watch the show and tell you how much they hate you, but they have to watch all of it and tell you how much they hate all of it. So I haven't figured out how to ban people from YouTube yet, but I'm getting pretty close to that phase where I'm just done dealing with the shills. And this some of the other comments. Well, you shouldn't monetize. Well, hey, I didn't monetize for what, 6 years, 6.5 years, and this costs money to do. This is not cheap. So, yeah, there's that. Let's see here. You know what I haven't seen the last couple of days? I haven't seen any updates on the NDAA. And I think that's very interesting, especially because you would think that we would have heard something by now. But again, the Fauci spectacle yesterday kind of took the wind out of anybody's sails to do anything other than go analyze what happened with Fauci. And I think it's just absolutely stupid that we're sitting here and we're having this discussion around what Fauci did, what Fauci didn't do, the fact that Fauci has this blanket coverage, the fact that Fauci couldn't plead the fifth, all those things don't matter. What matters, and by the way, I thought it was interesting this morning that not only an artist called Jesse, but Steve Bannon echoed some of the points I made yesterday. It's almost as if they watched my situation report yesterday and took some of the content, because Bannon was saying some of the same things about Burks and Redfield that I said, as well as some of the medical doctor that, going after the medical doctors and the press. It's almost as if you watched my show. But he said a few other things about DNI and replacing the DNI. Look, we're watching a repeat of Trump term one, right? The last 2 years of his administration was filled with swamp creatures and douchebags. We're watching the same thing play out. I'm officially over the whole City of London narrative. I'm over the whole concept that Trump's a superhero. I was over that a long time ago. I'm over the thought that anybody around him is actually doing anything other than lining their pockets at the expense of the American people. There's no evidence to support anything otherwise. I don't see a grand plan. Sorry, don't see it. And this latest announcement that he's not going to chase down the AutoPen signatures, it's not because it's not hard. It's because the Epstein files and COVID are all laced together. And they're laced together because if you bring down one of the dominoes, those dominoes bring down everybody else. And there's this wide belief in DC that if they release all of the Epstein information, they go after the people that perpetrated crimes, and they go after all the ancillary activities that he was doing, because he was doing a lot of money laundering for illicit operations for both the CIA and for Mossad. And the prevailing wisdom in DC is that if they burn one of these people and put them in prison, that person will burn down the whole system. I'm over that. Okay? I'm over it. Rip the Band-Aid off, arrest Fauci, Burks, Redfield, and Dasick, and prosecute them for crimes against humanity. Because Anthony Fauci is one of the biggest mass murderers in U.S. history, in world history, for that matter. And the fact that Trump doesn't, and again, he's all show and no go. He talks a big game, but he never pulls the trigger. And that has been proven time and time and time and time again. And this morning was a massive rug pull for everybody in the Maha movement. All those people like Tracy Beans that walked away from a very successful podcast to go and work in the Maha movement, only to get screwed over by RFK, who's apparently also compromised. I'm telling you, today's betrayal should be the nail in the coffin for anybody that thinks that Trump is working on this grand plan. Sorry. The grand plan is you convene grand juries outside of DC, you arrest Fauci, you prosecute him to the full extent of the law, and then you repatriate every dollar that he laundered, every dollar, and you give it to the families of the people that have died from vaccine injuries. So, and if Trump was smart, he would fire Susie Wiles before the midterms. But she's going to be there, from what I understand, until after the midterms. This is exactly what they did in 22. This is exactly the same thing. Trump people came into Carrie Lake's camp, trusted advisor. The day of the election, there was all kinds of malfeasance. And what did the Trump insider do? They fired everybody on her campaign. So there was nobody in the office on election day to actually go fight the legal fight. There was nobody left. They were all gone. And here we are, same thing, approaching the same game. Nothing's changed with the voting. Nothing changed with the voter rolls. Nothing's changed with the machines. I mean, you did the big speech, Trump. Why don't you go prosecute somebody? What is Blanche doing? I mean, you couldn't get him you couldn't get his nomination confirmed. So why not stick the guy on the election, all the election malfeasance? What do you got to lose? You got 29 months left, and that's going to go fast. And the last 12 months is basically going to be a waste, because it's going to be everybody running for 28, nobody paying attention to you. So I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know what evidence you need. It's not public opinion, because the public opinion is swaying against you right now. And it's swaying against you in an exponential way. I give it till November and everybody will despise you, especially if you say the word draft. You say the word draft, and guess what? Game over. It will be everybody looking at you saying, how do we get rid of this guy before he does anything else to destroy this country? And more importantly, how do we get rid of Netanyahu? How do we get this guy out of our government? Right? That's what you're all thinking. And that's what the world's going to be thinking come November if he decides to go down the route he's going down. So, yeah. I was told that Blanche is been told to stand down by Susie Wiles. I don't know if that's true or not. Who knows what's true? Who knows? I was told yesterday that the casualty count's over 600, 600 dead and a couple thousand wounded. If that's true, that's a pretty significant number. And why it hasn't been disclosed to the public, I think that's reprehensible. I think the fact that they're obfuscating all of the casualty counts is dangerous. Number one. Number two, I think it shows that there's not a lack of there's a lack of transparency, and it's on purpose. And that's a dangerous trend. I've said this before, and it's worth repeating. When you're doing influencing operations and you want the public to come along, you have to bring the public along with you for the big win. And when you obfuscate anything in that chain, public trust is gone. It was already gone before he came to office for anything big government, anything mainstream media. Definitely anything related to the intelligence communities. There was absolutely no trust whatsoever. But when you lie to the American people about the number of casualties in a conflict that we started, I can tell you unequivocally that the public will despise him when the real numbers come out. And they're going to ask the same question. Why were we not told? None of us wanted this war. 85% of the population said, we do not want a conflict in the Middle East again. We do not want a conflict that's on behalf of Israel, period. And now you obfuscate the casualty counts. You obfuscate the fact that we can't move the Navy in there. You lie about the oil, the way the oil logistically is flowing. You lie about the fact that the Iranians want to make a deal. They don't need to make a deal. They just need to wait us out, which is what they're doing. And even if we drop troops on the ground, which God forbid we do, because logistically that will be a nightmare, it'll be Stalingrad is what it will be. It'll be the Air Force saying we can sustain all these soldiers on the ground. The Germans couldn't do it in World War II. What do you think the odds are the U.S. Air Force is going to do that in a high threat environment with drones and hypersonic missiles? 0% chance of success. And there's no amount of wordsmithing and rhetoric that's going to make that true. And the downstream effects of that and the second and third order effects of that is Trump and his family are going to be despised. Despised. I mean, listen to Bannon. Bannon already despises the guy. And he definitely despises Radcliffe. I despise Radcliffe. Like, what have you done to clean up the CIA? Zero. So, if I was Trump and I was an advisor around Trump, I would have some very frank conversations, even if that meant me losing my job. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be better off if you distance yourself from the administration rather than ride the ship all the way to the rocks, which is where it's headed. And man, I was so disgusted this morning listening to Trump talk, because all I heard, instead of him saying we're not going to challenge the auto pen, we're not going to, because what he's really saying is we're not only not going to challenge the auto pen, we're not going to challenge any of the pardons that were issued, but more importantly, we're not going to arrest anybody that perpetrated the crimes to keep the public at bay because Biden was incapacitated. That's treason. The president was not capable of performing his duties. First of all, the Secret Service, whoever was on his Secret Service detail and knew he was not fit for duty, they should have said something. And it should have gone all the way to Congress. But it shows you that everybody in Congress was complicit in that as well. So not only are all of these pardons not going to be challenged, and most of them need to be, nobody that carried out the auto pen fraud, none of them are going to be held accountable. And then nobody in Congress that facilitated Biden coming to office are going to be held accountable. And Kamala Harris is not going to be held accountable because she knew as well. And she was the vice president. And God forbid she ever make it to president. But that was a damn sight better than watching some vegetable go out and try and, get through a 5-minute briefing with word soup. I mean, talk about a clown show. And all of it's because the divorced powers from reality that are in DC, the political elite, don't want the system to burn down. And it's already burned. The walls are already on fire. I mean, Jesus. The structure's on fire and all of them are like, should we put the couch underneath the window? I think the coffee table should go off to the side a bit closer to the side window. Never mind, the windows are broken and the walls are on fire and the structure's starting to collapse. Doesn't matter. That's how divorced from reality they are. They're so far divorced from reality that they have no concept of how much the American people absolutely despise them. And that congressman from San Francisco that basically got heckled out of his own rally in San Francisco got a taste of what it's going to look like for all these politicians if this NDAA is passed and signed into law. I mean, I don't need the NDAA now. This morning was absolutely a stab in the back for everybody that voted for Trump. We voted for Trump because we wanted to see accountability for the Biden regime and everything they did to destroy this country. And what Trump said is, I'm not prosecuting anybody. I'm going to hunker down and I'm going to protect my family. That's what he said this morning, which is a big screw you. And at the end of the day, I feel bad for the guy because he's picking a legacy that's not going to be favorable. He's going to remember worse than Herbert Hoover. And yeah, but it also shows you just how much the president is really not in charge. He's got all his advisors standing behind him when he's making this declaration, and his chief of staff is running the show. That to me is reprehensible. But he's going to prove himself to be a coward, and when he does, any respect left by the rest of the country, it's gone. And you can make the case this is right out of Pawns in the Game, because this is what they do. They literally burn the asset when they don't need you anymore. And it sure sounds like they don't need Trump. The thing I'm hoping for right now and hopeful of is that more Israeli soldiers will walk off their posts and say, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And, they're under reporting the number of casualties and the number of injuries they had during the Gaza campaign. And they paid dearly for that, both in men and material. And they're paying dearly for it in Lebanon too. The drones up there are just as bad as they are in Ukraine. So they're underreporting. I'm really curious to see, especially since we're at Thursday, where this NDA goes. That's what I got my eye on. And here's the funny thing. As of Tuesday, everybody in DC went dark about it. Nobody's talking about it. So that tells me that not only are going to pass it, they're going to pass it in the middle of the night. They're going to recess, and they're going to keep it as tight-lipped about it as they possibly can. So stay tuned for that, because that's signal. And we did Coffee and a Mic. Look for the link on. I'll post the link on Substack to it. Mike is going to unlock it so that everybody can watch it. I did a Coffee and a Mic with Mike Adams, Michael Yawn, and Mike Ferris. And I got to say, I think it was one of the better conversations. I was asked a question about, how many of those weapon systems do you think we need, right? And we were talking about drones and counter drones and counter missile, and I had to remind everybody that we don't buy weapon systems based on the enemy has this, so we need this too. We assess the threat of those weapons, then we build capability to defeat those weapons. And that capability is analyzed across not just the threat, but attrition, the likelihood of success for the weapon system that you're going against. And there's a process to do weapons development. It's not a fly-by-night deal. You can't just say, well, the drones are bad, so we need a counter to that. Well, what kind of drones are the most lethal? Which ones are doing the most damage? What's the attrition rate based on the current conflict and the current weapons? And how do we counter that? And then how rapidly can we deploy a proof of concept so we can go proof even if our concept is going to work? Now, in World War II, that process took about 6 to 8 months to get something from the drawing board to the battlefield. And the P-51 is a good example of that, right? They needed a long-range escort. They needed something fast, something that could go against the Messerschmitts and the FW-190s. And we were in development for almost 3 years before we finally came up with something that was turned out to be one of the best airplanes of the entire war. Still one of the best airplanes to fly today. And that process it's not quick, just like intelligence isn't quick. And I've been hearing more and more that we've already switched over to AI-based intelligence through Palantir and a few. I don't know how much of that I believe, because you still need somebody. You still need somebody to do the correlation between what the enemy disposition is and what you need to do to array your forces to counter all of that, right? I think AI can do some of that, but I don't think AI is that sophisticated yet. Maybe it is. Maybe it's Skynet. Who knows? But the point of the whole conversation was these guys, the powers that be that are behind Netanyahu, behind Trump, they are pushing for depopulation and world famine. And they don't mind burning the assets to do that. We, on our side of the fence, we need to not only disclose who they are, we need to disclose who they own, and we need to disclose what their agenda is. Because once that reaches the light of day, it takes away a lot of their power. Because then everybody knows who's behind it. It puts their life in peril. It puts their family's life in peril. It puts their agenda in peril because the public knows what's going on. And that's the piece that's been missing, along with how they plan. And I've talked about this several times. Some of the comments, I think it's just all the shills show up on YouTube. I hope this is a parody, because if this is, that's the dumbest thing I've ever read. Donald Trump is Jesus Christ. You're watching clones right in front of you playing the roles of politicians and celebrities. Okay. All right. Step away from the bong. You show me the empirical evidence of that. Show me the proof of that, right? I've seen all those rabbit holes. I've seen all that Q rabbit hole nonsense. I've seen all of the discussions around Hollywood stars that were replaced by clones. Somebody needs to come up with the goods on that, if that's real. Otherwise, it's just another rabbit hole to go down the road, blah, blah, blah. So I hope that's a parody. So anyway, sorry to derail the whole conversation, but some of these comments on YouTube are like, wow, really? Anyway, the signal in all this is to watch what happens with the NDAA and watch what Trump does over the next 72 to 96 hours once that is passes the Senate, because if he signs it, all of those narratives are out the door. He will sign that. That is him signing away our sovereignty to Israel. And if that makes it to the president's desk without 219 stripped out, it means that everybody in that chain is compromised. And it is. This is an act. This will be an act of war against the American people. And I don't know how much more real it's going to get. So at that point, the next thing for us to do is to bring the country to a complete halt. Full stop. No commerce, no logistics, no transportation, full stop. And burn the system down. It's only going to take 2-3 days of that, and the whole system will melt down quickly. And, I've said this before. Picking up arms doesn't mean you have to pick up arms. There's a lot of different ways that you can peacefully destroy this system without even breaking the law. All you have to do is know exactly where to shut things down and get people to walk off the job, and this place will grind to a halt quickly. And you can go stop your car on the freeway. There's like choke points all over the US and major cities. And guess what? Full stop. Gridlock, full stop for hours. Just take a sandwich, pack a lunch, have at it. So there's a lot of different ways that we can interdict their entire operation and destroy a complex operation very, very quickly without having to fire a shot. And we're going to see in the next 4 or 5 days if it's going to be necessary. I would hope Trump has a set of cojones, but he's so far all show no go. So we'll see. We're going to see. It's going to play out within the next week. So even though, they're not going to go on recess until the SAVE Act is resolved, whatever. It's all theater and drama. It's kabuki theater. So pay attention to the NDAA. That's the signal in all of this. That's the bellwether. Fauci, not going to prison. Nobody from COVID's going to prison. So, yeah. Again, it's one of those problems we're going to have to solve. as a resilient community once this is all said and done. So this should be interesting. I'll be back tomorrow with the update, assuming that, something actually happens. I don't think it will, but you never know. And be looking for the affiliate links are in the show for Strong Coffee. It helps the show. And it's actually, I'm trying to build affiliates for products I actually use and things I actually use and things I have in my contingency gear. So yeah, look for that. You can find somebody asked me about radios again. I swear I get asked every single show. The radio links are on Substack. They should be in the show notes. If not, I'll post them in the show notes. They're pinned to the top of my feed. So if you go out to the Path Forward 25 at Substack, you'll get those links and you can go buy the radios that I have. So look for that. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow. God bless. One team, one fight.